Right, in this video we're going to address this question here: how do you create a z-score? We're also going to look at why and what it is. But straight to the punchline, if you're in a hurry, here goes the formula if you wanted to type it into Excel. So it's the data point that you're looking at minus the mean, the average, divided by the standard deviation. So if you're going to type that into Excel, if we're wanting to make a z-score of all the data in column B, here's what you do. You go, so equals bracket cell B2 minus average of all the observations in column B. So it's B colon B, close brackets, and then close the brackets around that part, then divided by standard deviation of all the observations in column B. And then you drag it down. We're going to have a look at this in Excel in a second, so just a bit of a worked example. But to go back to this, the why, it's always helpful to understand, why you're doing things, because you kind of need to know. One, people are going to ask you it probably, and two, you need to be across what you're doing, and you need to understand why, and it just helps the whole process. So why you would use a z-score is basically for comparability. So to standardize something, and that could actually be standardizing something that's already standardized. And the key point really is that, well, first of all, you want to compare either two different things, or multiple different things, or one thing against its own history. Now, on standardizing, there's multiple different ways to standardize things. So you could take percentage change, you could express one series as a percentage of another's, or deviation from trend or ranking, etc. Now on that trend note, if you have a series which is clearly trending, you can't really use the z-score for that. You could definitely use the you'd first have to transform it. So you'd have to take it as a deviation from trend or a percentage change. The point of a z-score is it basically has to be done on a stationary or mean reverting series. So you couldn't do it on the level of the stock market, for example. If you look at the level of the S&P 500, over the long term it has this trending tendency. It basically goes up over the long run. Or it goes down, but if it certainly doesn't revert to the mean, it reverts to trend, seems to be. But if you looked at, for example, the PE ratio, which is basically a transformation or standardization of the S&P 500, which is obviously standardizing it against earnings. That is something that is mean reverting, and that is something that is stationary. That is something that most definitely you could use a z-score on. So really, it's all about comparability, and I'll hammer that point home in the worked example in Excel in a moment. And what is a z-score? It's simply the number of standard deviations away from the average that a particular observation is. And how do you calculate it? Again, it's data point minus mean divided by standard deviation. So let's get into Excel here. Now what we've got in columns AN and AO here is speculative futures positioning for US 10-year treasuries and government bond mutual fund flows in column AO. Now, just briefly on that, so before you start transforming or analyzing, manipulating the series, the best thing to do is just to take a look at it and explore what the data is, explore what kind of what it looks like, and get your hands into it. That one's clearly it's fairly stationary. It's not really trending to a great degree either way across time. Same thing for speculative futures positioning, and there's a reason for this, because I've actually standardized this one already. That's why it's a percentage point. So what this is the non-commercial longs minus non-commercial shorts divided by total open interest, and that last point is the key. If I just took the first part of that, it would actually be looking like it was trending across time, as it typically would do, as more and more people adopt the use of futures over time. So standardizing it before we can actually perform this analysis is pretty key. Now, for the purpose of this exercise, I'll just clear these columns because we're going to repopulate them anyway. And here's the formula. So as before, starting off with column AN, so we're going to start by putting in the equals, bracket, open brackets, cell AN2 minus average, open bracket, AN colon, AN, and then close bracket, and what that does is that's that cell there that I'm pointing to minus the average of the entire column. And if you're going to do it that way, you better make sure that there's nothing sitting around down the bottom of that. Otherwise, you just want to select the range of the data. And basically this is standardizing it or taking the z-score across the entire period. Sometimes you might want to only have it compared to a certain period. But anyway, then you put the divided by a sign, which is a slash, standard deviation, or STDEV, open bracket, AN colon, AN close bracket, and that's it. So this one, at the very start there, or back in so January 2007, it was 2.2 standard deviations beyond average. That is an extreme reading. So, if you think about using a z-score, you want to be looking for extreme readings, and because extreme readings tend to give you the best opportunities, they're usually found at key moments in the market, often at turning points. When you're looking at an indicator like futures positioning, then that's obviously a sentiment indicator, and extremes in sentiment can be particularly informative. So we're just going to get down to the bottom by jumping onto this column, go control down arrow just to jump down there, holding control and shift and then pressing up to select that whole column. Then I'm going to go control B, which is going to drag that whole series down, control up arrow again, and because they're just side by side, just for neatness, then you go hold down shift and press the right arrow to highlight the second column, and then you go control plus R to drag the formula across. There's just a couple of little bonus Excel tips while we're at it. And now we've got two series here that are now in z-score form. You might say, well, hang on a minute, let's go back and see what these two look like on a chart. And obviously one's they're completely different kinds of series, so they're not going to be at all comparable like that. One way around it would be to put them onto different axes, so you could chart that one over onto the secondary axis. But then you've still got to manipulate the axes to try and get it to where you specifically want it, and then if you do that, then people will start accusing you of manipulating or trying to mislead. So that is another good benefit of using a z-score, is that it puts it into it's an objective mechanical way of making two things comparable. And then here's what it looks like if we put them onto a single chart. We'll just move it up a bit, and you can see there the orange line. We can see here how they compare there. It's obviously much better than what it was to begin with in the original, so makes them comparable. The other thing is that you can then go ahead and from there start making composite indicators, but I'll talk a bit more about composite indicators in a different video, so watch out for that. And the final note there, you probably want to smooth that one because it's quite a noisy series. So taking, say, we'll just for argument's sake, we'll take a 4 week, because this is weekly stuff, so take a 4 week average of that one, just for argument's sake. You can see there that what it's doing is capturing the signal of each one, and as you would probably expect, the signal is roughly the same, not quite the same, but roughly the same. And but that's kind of more about the composite indicators, which we'll go into next time. So that is basically that's how you create a z-score. And so we talked about why, what it is, and just again for the formula, it's the data point minus the average divided by the standard deviation. And if you like this video, make sure that you press the like button and subscribe to the channel. I'll be doing some more of this kind of videos, this video series. So stay tuned.